What Romans did to humiliate prisoners was worse than death. You can hear the applause before you open your eyes. It isn't for triumph, it's for your undoing. The air tastes of iron and smoke, and when the whip cracks, it isn't just your back that splits. It's the thin skin of everything you once believed held you together. The sun burns white, the marble gleams, and Rome watches you learn what it means to be seen and erased at the same time. Before we begin, take a moment to breathe. Think about where you are watching this. In Lahore, São Paulo, London, or Lagos. This story once belonged to marble statues and dust, but now it travels on light, through screens, across languages, through time itself. If you can feel the weight of history pressing against your chest, drop a like, share it forward, and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Because tonight, the empire rises again in memory. He stands in the forum, naked but for the tatters of a senator's dignity. Marcus Livius, or what remains of him, trembles under the Mediterranean sun. His skin is a geography of wounds, cross-hatched red and purple where the flagrum has bitten too deep. But the crowd doesn't see a man, they see theater. They see Rome reminding itself what power looks like when it stops pretending to be just. The lictors circle him like priests at a blood rite. Each lash falls not to kill, but to demonstrate. The flagrum, leather braided with metal and bone, is designed for spectacle. Its sound carries. It tears not only flesh but rank, the delicate fabric that separates senator from slave. By the 20th strike, the body ceases to be eloquent. By the 30th, the bladder breaks, and the audience knows the performance has reached its climax. No one speaks. The only sound is a slow hiss, admiration, disgust, awe. Rome knows that death can be merciful, humiliation is eternal. The ritual unfolds in stages. First, the stripping of the toga, that white river of authority sliding from his shoulders, a silence louder than any drum. Then the tunica molesta, the transparent punishment garment clinging to the body like accusation. His hands are bound, a wooden bit is forced between his teeth, transforming words into the helpless groan of an animal. The executioners are meticulous, not because cruelty excites them, but because order demands precision. To dishonor improperly would itself be a kind of disorder. At the edge of the forum, a scribe records every motion. How many lashes before the senator cried out? At what point the crowd began to cheer? How the magistrate averted his eyes only after the final blow. This is bureaucracy as theater, humiliation rendered into data. Even shame must be archived. A boy standing on a column whispers, "Why does he not die?" His father answers, "Because Rome has not yet decided he may." And then silence again, that Roman silence, which is never empty but full of judgment. Later, they will say Marcus Livius confessed under torture, admitting to bribery, to cowardice, to impiety. But what matters is not whether it was true. What matters is that everyone saw him fall. The whip was merely the instrument. The eyes of the crowd were the real weapon. That night in the bathhouse shadows, another senator will whisper, "Did you see how he broke?" And the others will nod, relieved that it was him and not them. By morning, they will all have learned the lesson. Better to die quickly than to live publicly disgraced. In Rome, dignitas was not a private possession. It was a mirror held by others. When that mirror shattered, the self vanished with it. To be stripped, to be seen as powerless, to be remembered as an object of laughter, this was a fate worse than the executioner's axe. Many of the flogged did not survive the week, not because the wounds killed them, but because shame did. Suicides multiplied like offerings. Poison in the cup, a dagger under the ribs, a leap from the bridge, each a final attempt to reclaim agency in a world where the body had become public property. Some chroniclers wrote that the gods turned away when such spectacles began, that Jupiter himself refused to look down upon a Rome that devoured its own. But the people kept coming. They filled the forum, the amphitheaters, the courtyards, not for mercy, but for meaning. To watch another's undoing was to reaffirm one's own place in the cosmic order, and so the system endured. The architecture of humiliation became as stable as the stones beneath their feet. Columns held the sky, whips held the law, and the human body became a kind of parchment on which power wrote its truth. When the final lash fell, Marcus Livius did not scream. He lifted his face toward the blinding sun, not in defiance but in disbelief that anything so bright could still exist. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring, satisfied. The forum returned to its rhythm, traders shouting, fountains running, pigeons cooing in the eaves. Only the blood remained, seeping into the cracks between stones that had seen centuries of the same. That night the servants found his body in his villa, a cup overturned beside him, his lips darkened with hemlock. No note, no curse, no plea for divine justice, just silence. Rome did not record his last words because Rome had already spoken for him. And beneath the moonlit colonnades, the stones still glistened faintly as if remembering. For in the capital of the world, death was never the end, only the moment when a man learned that being seen broken was the truest form of disappearance. Dawn breaks gray over the Tiber, and Rome stirs to the scent of rot and smoke. The streets gleam from last night's rain, narrow veins pulsing toward the forum where judgment waits. Somewhere behind barred doors, a man breathes shallowly, his wrists bound in cords that leave his hands cold and blue. His name is Gaius Publius, though by sunset he will have none. It begins 3 days before the drowning. The ritual was always longer than the death itself, as if Rome wished to watch the soul unravel before the body followed. The condemned was first unmade, layer by layer, through gestures rehearsed 1,000 times. His toga was torn away, the symbol of citizenship reduced to scraps. A priest approached with the mask, dogskin, stiff with age, the snout crudely stitched. Its stench of salt and hair filled the air. When they forced it over his face, he gagged. "Do not resist," the magistrate said softly, almost kindly. "You have already been named what you are." The crowd murmured approval. In this theater of punishment, mercy was the only profanity. The mask was not random cruelty. The dog, the snake, the rooster, the monkey, each creature would later share the sack, chosen to mirror the condemned's betrayal of blood. The dog for loyalty perverted, the snake for deceit, the rooster for false vigilance, the monkey for mockery of reason. Rome made symbols of everything, even despair. The second day brought the procession. Gaius was fitted with wooden clogs that struck the stones like hooves. They made walking awkward, a deliberate humiliation, each stumble a spectacle. From the prison in the Tullianum he was led through the Subura, where tavern doors swung open and the poor poured out to watch. Women spat from balconies. Children ran alongside, pelting him with dung and spoiled fruit. "Parricide," they cried. "Beast! Unborn son!" The air smelled of vinegar and sweat. Flies gathered on his skin. Every few steps, soldiers halted him to read aloud the decree, so no Roman might doubt what crime this man had committed. He had killed his father, the one who gave him life, and thus forfeited his own place in the world of men. By the time the procession reached the forum, Gaius's legs were bleeding from the clogs, his lips split. Yet worse than pain was the silence that fell when the priest approached the rostra. The city itself seemed to hold its breath. The priest lifted a rod and declared, "He is no longer a Roman, he is no longer a son." The words struck with the weight of law. Gaius bowed his head, and in that moment, something inside him, the last thread of belonging, snapped. The crowd exhaled, murmuring prayers not for him but for themselves, relieved to stand on the right side of the gods. Night fell on the third day. The river whispered beyond the bridge, swollen from rain, its surface reflecting the faint orange of torches. The coleus lay on the platform, a massive leather sack stitched with care, dark as oil. Beside it waited the animals. The rooster crowed frantically in the torchlight, the monkey bared its teeth, the snake coiled in a wicker cage, the dog snarled, sensing something unnatural in the air. The guards stripped Gaius one last time. His skin shone pale against the darkness. The magistrate read the sentence again, his voice flat, ritualistic. Let the murderer of blood be joined with beasts and cast away, denied both air and earth. They forced Gaius to kneel. The dogskin mask stayed on. He was bound hand and foot with cords, then rolled toward the sack's open mouth. One by one, the animals were thrust in with him. The monkey shrieked, clawing at his chest. The dog howled. The snake's hiss was drowned beneath the cacophony. The sack swelled with life. "Seal it," said the magistrate. The rope tightened, twisting until the mouth closed. The guards lifted it. 4 men, their faces expressionless, and carried it to the edge of the bridge. The crowd pressed forward, faces glowing in torchlight, eyes wide with morbid reverence. Some said you could hear prayers inside the sack. Others said curses. The truth was closer to neither. What echoed was pure instinct. The chorus of trapped flesh realizing too late that it shared a single fate. The sound was unlike anything else. Half growl, half sob, entirely human in its terror. With a signal, the sack was released. It struck the river with a deep thud, then rolled once, twice before the current pulled it under. The torches flickered, their reflections breaking into ripples. For a moment, the surface bubbled as air escaped. Then, nothing. The water smoothed, indifferent. No one spoke. Even the soldiers waited, listening. It was said that if the sack floated, the gods had refused it. But it did not. The Tiber accepted the offering, swallowing guilt and flesh alike. There would be no burial, no ashes, no stone to mark his name. By dawn, the current had carried it beyond the city's edge, where the river widened into mist. Fishermen claimed they heard faint cries that morning, but when they cast their nets, they found only reeds tangled in leather. Back in the forum, the magistrate ordered the record inscribed, Gaius Publius, struck from the rolls of men. The tablet would later crumble, the letters fading, but for centuries Romans would remember the image, the sack, the river, the sound that lingered in their dreams. Because that was the genius of the Poena Culae. It was not death alone, but deletion. The Romans believed that to die unburied was to vanish even from divine memory. To drown unseen, unheard, unmarked, that was to cease existing entirely, and as the river's surface closed once more, Rome's heart beat on, untroubled as if it had not just consumed one of its own. Yet beneath that calm flow, somewhere in the black, something moved. One last ripple of air, one faint thud against the leather walls. Then silence. The ladder gleams in morning light, freshly oiled wood against the marble of the forum. 20 rungs, 20 steps of surrender. The crowd gathers close, their shadows overlapping like blades. A man waits at the base, his hands bound, his breath shallow. His name is Davis, though soon no one will speak it again. He kneels as ordered. The first magistrate extends a sandaled foot. The ritual begins. This was Rome's invention of obedience, the scala servorum, the slave's ladder. To strike one's master was rebellion against the gods themselves, and punishment required performance. Each rung was both confession and spectacle. For every foot he kissed, the crowd counted aloud, turning repentance into rhythm. 1, they shout as his lips touch dust and leather. The next magistrate steps forward. 2, the cadence grows louder, voices rolling across the square. Davis climbs, trembling, his chains clinking against the wood. The sun burns against his back. He hesitates at the 7th rung. The crowd hisses. A guard raises the whip. By the 15th, his lips are cracked and bleeding. By the 20th, The whip has left red crescents across his shoulders. At the top, his master waits, a patrician in a white toga bordered with crimson, his face unmoved. "Ask forgiveness," the magistrate commands. Davos tries to speak, but his voice breaks. "Domine, miserere." Lord, have mercy. The crowd leans forward, hungry. The master does not reply. A nod. The guards seize Davos by the wrists and strike him once, twice until his hands lose grip. He falls. 20 feet of silence followed by the dull thud of flesh on stone. For a heartbeat, the forum stills. Then applause, scattered but growing. He lies twisted, ribs sharp beneath torn skin. The ladder stands above him like a spine. Somehow he crawls, leaving a trail of blood, dragging himself toward his master's sandals. He kisses them again, whispering, "I am still your man." The master turns away. The sentence is announced: crucifixion at dusk. Rome loved repetition. Each punishment a script refined over centuries, designed to teach the watching masses what order looked like. The latter ritual was not about death. It was about hierarchy made visible. The fall reminded every slave, every plebeian, that to rise above one's station was to invite gravity's judgment. The camera moves now through another theater, the arena, where justice and myth intertwined. Today's play, Orpheus and the Beasts. The condemned, dressed in tattered finery, stand center stage with a wooden lyre. The audience knows the script. He will charm the wild creatures, they will seem lulled, then the gates will open. The bear enters, ribs visible, muzzle stained. The man plucks a trembling note. The crowd laughs at the futility of melody against hunger. The bear lunges. The lyre breaks first, then the man's ribs. The applause returns, unbroken from morning to dusk. Was it punishment, or was it art? Rome made no distinction. By the century's end, cruelty turned upward, from slaves and criminals to emperors themselves. The empire had grown expert at the erasure of its own masters. The scene shifts to night. Torches flicker before the Senate House. A statue of Domitian looms, bronze, immense, the emperor's face cast in immortal calm. Soldiers tie ropes around its neck. With a shout, they pull. The statue topples, striking the pavement in a roar of bronze and dust. The head rolls across the stones, eyes staring sightlessly at the feet of the mob. "Damnatio memoriae," the people cry. The condemnation of memory. His name will be struck from every inscription, his image chiseled from reliefs, his likeness burned. The Senate decrees that he never lived. Workers move through temples and forums, chisels ringing like faint bells. The name Domitianus disappears letter by letter, leaving pale scars in the marble. On triumphal arches, the faces of emperors are scraped away, blank ovals where divinity once looked out. At the pyre, the bronze head is raised high. A herald proclaims, "Let his memory perish with his deeds." Flames catch, and molten metal runs down like tears. The people cheer, their voices echoing off the marble facades. Yet even as the statue burns, smoke curling into the Roman night, something uneasy stirs among them. The recognition that if an emperor's name can vanish, so can anyone's. The camera glides through time, centuries collapsing like ash. Ruins rise from the dark. The forum now lies silent, columns cracked, statues broken. The scars remain, rectangular patches where words once were. Historians trace their fingers along the stone, feeling the absences carved by rage. Rome had invented a new kind of death, to be remembered only by what was taken away. Somewhere among those erasures lies the outline of Davis's world. Men like him who fell from ladders, who kissed dust, whose names were never inscribed to be removed. Their memories needed no chisels. Silence did the work for them. The wind sighs through the ruins, carrying faint echoes of voices, the counting of a crowd, the crack of a whip, the roar of a mob as bronze melts. What remains when memory burns? The camera lingers on a single block of marble, its surface pitted, a faint groove cutting through centuries of grime. Once it read Imperator Caesar Domitianus Augustus. Now it is only stone and shadow, and yet the wound endures. Even absence leaves a mark. In the final shot, the torchlight fades, leaving only moonlight across the forum. The ladder is gone, the arena silent, the emperor's head forgotten. But carved into the night air itself, something whispers still, a lesson Rome never meant to teach, that what power destroys, time remembers.